Welcome to another episode of Thrasher Opera House Presents. Today I'm here with Roby Irvin, who has been involved with the Thrasher Opera House for almost its whole existence. Not since 1910, but its new existence starting in the early 90s. And Roby, you've been many things here over the duration of that time, starting with the project manager of the restoration project. So not even involved in the music end of things, involved in the building end of things. And then moved into being a board member, executive director, and programming director, and I'm sure a lot of things in between. So I guess I'm curious to find out, throughout that time from 1993?
1994.
1994.
95, somewhere in there.
Until now. I guess you did retire a couple years ago.
Semi-retired.
Right before the pandemic, you lucky duck.
Timing is the secret to life.
And just curious about all the things that changed with the Thrasher during that duration of time. And I know we don't have enough time to talk about all the things, but some of the highlights. So.
Sure. I can start at the beginning. At the beginning, I was called in by Ron Hagstrom to build a wooden proscenium arch molding around a stage that didn't even have a proscenium arch. It was gone, and it wasn't there. You've seen some of the original pictures. So I said, yeah, but what about everything else? You're not ready for me. What about everything else?
You don't even have a real stage. What do you need the arch for?
It didn't have a stage. It didn't have the thrust, the section that comes out. It was just a flat wall that was just open up there. There are some pictures showing what it looked like when we started. And he said, yeah, that's what I mean. You want to get involved. And so that's how I became involved in the restoration. He told me his goal was to get on the National Registry. And so...
Yeah, I think we should let listeners know, if you didn't know, Thrasher was built in 1910 and was a operating theater, vaudeville, movie house. And then over time... became pretty much dilapidated. It was a storage facility for a while, and so when Ron Hagstrom came into the picture, he wanted to bring it back to life. And then that's where you come in and you walk into a room that is nowhere near looking like a theater.
Well, in addition to not looking like a theater, it had, I believe, about 20 tons of junk that we ended up tearing out of it.
Did you find any good junk?
Well, we found some historic stuff, like the board you have from the back of the stage door about the last play that was here, saying you can't take it with you. And there's names of people that we recognize in the community that have been around since 1940s when this plaque was, or they signed the trim on the back of the window.
Yeah, we have that.
So I agreed with Ron that it would be fun to try to bring a building back on the National Registry. And it had been redone by another contractor on the outside. And the Historical Society was concerned that they didn't stay exactly historically correct. And so they wanted the inside to be historically correct. So that was our goal, was to bring it back and keep it historically correct.
Well, that was kind of hard because there's like one or two pictures of the inside of the Opera House from those early days.
Yeah.
So that's all you had to work with.
We didn't have pictures, but we had trim and the style of how they had built things
the
during
materials.
that time.
Sure.
And so we could replicate and copy what we didn't have copies of, because we removed everything from the interior walls and then reinstalled it, insulated it, reinstalled it. So we did have a little bit of a map of what we were looking to do. So that was a year and a half of work. Actually, it's continuing to this day.
Well, and you know what's not there? The proscenium arch.
That's you got to my punchline.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was the humorous part of this whole thing, is we never really got to the project that originally Ron had called me for.
Well, and we've still, like you said, have been working on the historical accuracy. Last year, you helped us, and I say you helped us. You did this project. You put in the historical window, making it look just like it did in 1910, which is pretty awesome.
Well, and that was fulfilling a promise that I made during the process of getting it on the National Registry. We had to go down to Madison, Ron and I, and meet before the State Historical Society and present our project. And they questioned the window. And I told them that we have plans to replace that window with a historically correct window.
And what year was that you made that promise?
It was 1997.
Okay.
So it only took us...
Till 2021.
Yeah.
Hey, a promise is a promise, you know?
We got to it.
You did.
Eventually.
You did.
So fast forward a little bit. We went through the project and got it ready for the first show, which I believe was 1998 for the Green Lake Festival of Music. Borrowed chairs from the fire department and got the lighting done on the night before the show. The stage wasn't done.
I love it.
The wainscot wasn't done. And there's pictures of that as well. So then Ron said, during that process, we need to find out what we're going to do with this building now. Would you be happy to go to Arts Midwest show?
Oh.
So the first one I attended, and you'll appreciate this.
This is a booking conference.
It's
Arts
a booking
Midwest,
conference.
where you find acts to bring to your venue.
Right. We just had a building. And I went down there on a wing and a prayer. Happened to be in Milwaukee, so I could drive down there by myself. One day, walked in, and people listening to podcasts won't realize how difficult this is, but you will. Knew nobody, didn't know the first thing, how to approach people, didn't know the code of conduct, which I think I passed anyways.
Because you literally go to these booking conferences and you meet with agents and you discuss bringing these acts to your venue. And it involves, talking about their fee structure and ticket prices, all of which you'd never presented a Thrasher Opera House show. So
yeah, we didn't
just winged it.
We didn't even know how it works. I was just there to try to learn what we needed to know. But Ron had given me a list of acts. Stephen Wright, who's a comedian, very funny comedian. Bill Cosby, a couple of other things. He said,
oh my gosh,
can you find out how much these things cost when you go down there? So, as you know, you go there and people now, having done it 20 years I did, and you've done it 10 years,
No.
whatever times that you have done it. It seems like it's been a number of times.
I've been here 6 years, and I've only been doing that part for maybe 2. But really, the pandemic
Seems
happened.
Like 10, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you don't know. I don't know the agents. They don't know me. And I realized I have to sell them on what we have, because I'd say, how much is Stephen Wright? And they said, well, he's getting $55,000 for a night. And then the next question out of there is, how many seats do you have? And I would say 200 seats is what we have. And their interest in talking to me, all of it went right out the window. And I could see it in their eyes, because they'd start to look down the aisle to see who was coming next. Because they knew there was no way that we were going to pay $55,000 for an act. So after one day of being down there, I came back and told Ron, this isn't going to work. We need to be a nonprofit, and we need to raise money to supplement the cost of what it takes to put on acts at Thrasher. Mm-hmm. That was the first moment that we realized this isn't so easy as build it and they will come.
It's tough, yeah.
That statement's an easy thing to say. It's not. It's a totally different thing to try to make the economics of it work. So we did form a nonprofit, of which we established, I believe it's 1999, was the first year of the nonprofit. At that point, we were operating out of a little corner over here, and Ron Hagstrom's brother, Alan Hagstrom, who was a minister, so he, worked on the weekends, more or less, on Sunday, worked part-time as our executive director. Once we started a nonprofit, we had a board. I served as the first president on that board, and it was, even our board members, we weren't real sure what we were trying to do.
What I love about the Thrasher origin story, or whatever you want to call it, is it really, I see it coming together as a bunch of people who really believed in the mission and wanted to make this work. Because the board is all volunteer people. And every person who all along has believed in this place, has given of their time and their wisdom, and this was the first example of that.
Yeah, and the fact that it took a community for this to work became obvious right away. Even during the renovation part, there were donations coming in. They weren't nonprofit, so they weren't tax-deductible donations as it is now when you give a donation. So these were people that really believed in that this was an interesting concept for the area.
And
we
a
had
good
our
thing for Green Lake.
distractors as well. I mean, there were people that, that'll never work. Fortunately, we weren't smart enough or informed enough to know that it wouldn't work.
You just went ahead anyway.
We went ahead, and that was one of our strengths, was our naivety.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of our best strengths. And in some ways, I think that served us well for a number of years.
And maybe in the long run, tenacity. It's not working this way. We're going to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, I got a good story on that one. So Alan wanted to go back to ministry back in Minnesota where his family was. And so at that point, I said I would be the interim director, executive director.
20 years.
We didn't have money to really pay anyone. Alan had been paid by Ron, not by the board, because we had no money. We hadn't started raising money
And
yet.
hadn't had shows.
We didn't have shows.
Yeah.
What shows we had were shows that were of interest to Ron and Alan that were Barbershop Quartet, and we did do some shows. What is
Granny.
it?
Granny.
Yeah, something Granny.
Her photos in the green room.
Yeah, it's still in the green room. I don't want to say it was corny. We were just trying to get started. It was affordable. We were trying to prove this would work. And I got a funny story. I went back as a president now to a show, and there was a group that I thought I heard showcase, and I thought they were great. It was
at
four
Arts
women.
Midwest.
Yeah, at Arts Midwest.
Okay.
And it was 4 women. And those 4 women were called the 4 Bitchin' Babes.
Mm-hmm.
I brought that back to both the board and Alan. This is when he was executive director. Alan just about, we can't do that. We can't do that. And I said, why? He goes, how do you think the community would accept bitching babes? And I said, it's bitchin', not bitching.
There's a difference.
There's a difference. He goes, what's the difference? I go, well, I grew up a surfer in California. If it was a really good day of surfing, we'd say it was really bitchin' out there.
Do you think YouTube's going to be okay with... I think YouTube doesn't care if we say bitchin'.
We're saying bitchin'.
Oh, yeah,
not
it's different.
bitching. It's like cool.
Right.
Way cool. So it took a while, including I think Alan went and looked it up. It took a year before anyone... Now,
so that's the first controversial thing
That was the
Thrasher
most controversial thing that we did. And I have to tell you, Madison was presenting them on Mother's Day for 10 years straight, and they set the attendance record and CD sales, probably cassette sales back then, for their performance. And we were going to piggyback onto it the night before. They were going to come to Green Lake. And we were even going to do Babe of the Day and, have a little contest. So there was, right away, we were learning how to maximize performances, how to
through routing.
Route with someone else, a big venue. We did very well with it. We got good attendance. We got good notoriety out of it.
And people had fun at the show, I'm sure, because if you haven't seen the Bitchin' Babes, they're
And we never had
really
anyone
fun.
complain about the title. But that was early on. We were trying to learn how this all ties together. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say the rest is history, but...
Well, we still follow that model pretty much. There's... Once in a while we do something, I don't know if the word is controversial, but something that's maybe a little bit outside of the comfort zone of our community. We don't book the same acts every single year. There's definitely some repeats we have because people love it. But sometimes bringing something new to the community is just as important as having their old favorites.
Right. And the important thing about that story in the Four Bitchin' Babes is that even if it was a little bit controversial, it got people talking. And that's what we needed. We needed people to notice that Thrasher was here and doing things differently. Yeah. Another thing that is a story is a little bit of a diversion, but it shows the tenacity and the naivety of how we approached doing things here. We didn't realize, and the city didn't realize when they gave us a beer and wine license, that we weren't supposed to have a wine license unlimited. You had to have a full liquor license. There are laws that says that each municipality can only have so many licenses. So we were operating, I think the Babes may have been one of the first shows where we served wine, and we were operating for a year when they realized, because someone else noticed that we were doing it, why couldn't they do it in a nearby community, that the city,
we gave you a liquor license that you shouldn't have.
So this is where I look back at it now and say the benefits of youth and ignorance. I stood before the city council when they said we're going to take away the license. We have no choice. It's because it's the law. And I said, well, then maybe that law needs to be changed. We were doing another program, and have for ever since the beginning, called the Missoula Children's Theater. And a participant in the Missoula Children's Theater was a young lady whose mother was Joan Baldwin. At that point, she was the mayor of Marquessan, and she was our state representative, newly elected state representative. So I talked to Joan, knowing her from Missoula Children's Theater.
Like, hey, how's your kid enjoying Missoula? By the way, how do we change the law?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the first bills that she introduced was a bill called the Thrasher Opera House bill, which allowed nonprofit organizations to be an exemption to the limit that is in each municipality for liquor licenses.
What I like about the story is it's just another example of how Thrasher just did everything the right way. Even if it was the harder way to do it, like changing the law is not an easy thing to do, but it was the right way to do it. And that's a really important thing to us even to this day.
It was the right way, but what came out of that was not just that nonprofit arts organizations would have another revenue stream, which is important to all of them. But it also pulled the community together. We, as a community, the mayor wrote letters. Our local restaurants wrote letters. The publisher of the local paper also went down and testified. Martha and I went down and testified and lobbied.
And a lot of the board members.
And board members did. So it was another example of a community coming together to make something work for everybody.
Make it happen, yeah.
It takes, I hate to use the cliche, but it does take a community for this to work through donations and through a lot of members of the community, contractors and whatnot, giving of their time, material. We've got a list real long, which you keep maintained, that seems to be growing all the time.
Yeah, our donor list of financial donors and in-kind donors is almost to the point where we can't fit it on the little insert in our programs anymore, so we might have to find a new way to display those. It's a good problem to have.
It is a real good problem to have, and we haven't always had that problem.
And the other thing I think worth pointing out is we have a really strong donor base of it's not like we have this $1 million donor every year. It's not about that for Thrasher. What I love, it's like everybody gives their $25, their $100 donation, and it's just a lot of people who do that. And it's really humbling because then you just feel like, wow, a lot of people care about this place and what it's doing, either because of the music that it brings to town, the economic impact it brings to town, or maybe it's the historical value, of having this building that in 1910 was a musical landmark, and it's still doing its intended purpose today. That's a really cool thing.
It is, and it actually is a perfect building for what this community needs, because it's not huge, it's intimate, and which makes it perfect for performances. I've seen your past podcasts where you've talked about the advantages of small venues over large ones. And for me, it takes me back to, I'm quite a bit older, but when I grew up in Southern California, we had places like the Troubadour, Roxy. All of these places were smaller than Thrasher, yet I saw James Taylor, Carole King, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Neil Young in a 60-seat venue. And that is what has stuck with me, not the Eagles at the Forum or any of the other big shows that I've seen. I remember those, but the moments that you really feel the passion of music was in a small venue. And that's why it was so important to me to be involved in Thrasher, was it reminded me of what really got me passionate about music.
Yeah, you list off those concerts, and I've always been jealous of all the concerts you've attended in your lifetime, because you've seen some really, really big names.
All before I did this job, it.
Yeah, you could have put that on your resume.
I didn't, I actually started out, and I didn't really mention this much, but my music started in 6th grade when I got a guitar, and I took guitar lessons and learned to play Louie Louie. And so through high school, I played in a garage, what we called garage bands then. And the players from my band then, or our band then, a number of them went on to be studio musicians and play in Southern California. So I was never very good at it. So I just keep that quiet. I guess that ended today, but it doesn't matter. If you asked me to pick up a guitar, I probably couldn't play Louie Louie today.
Well, I think, the arts world or the music world needs all different types of musical people, and some of them are musicians. We obviously need them to do what we do. But then, on the flip side, you need people who do what we've done and be like the arts organizers, essentially.
Right.
Even though sometimes it doesn't feel very organized. It's more fun than that. But.
It's more arts skill than people realize. There is a lot of that. I know you and I still talk about programming sometime, but the pressure of programming, everyone thinks it's the funnest part of the job. And of course, discovery of new artists is fun. But then to take that discovery of a new artist and do what I had mentioned earlier, the math, the economics behind it, and then how will it sell in our community? Is the Four Bitchin' Babes too much for our community? Those things all require a finesse and a skill that is much more arts-based than what I think maybe even your board members and the public realizes. But then there's the pressure. Am I crazy for thinking this is a great performance and seeing reaction? You can do all the math you want, but it still may not sell.
You get the confirmation email, like, confirmed, this is coming. And then you just, panic a little bit, like...
Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay, it's happening.
I know it's a podcast, so I can't swear, but you do have that moment of which... Okay.
Almost every time still. I mean, does that ever wear off? I guess I'm still so new at it that I feel like I get that way every time, unless I'm signing something that we've had many times before, like a Paul Thorne or the Alley Cats. But, you did it for 20 years or whatever. Was it any easier that last year you did it than...
It was much easier going to the conferences and talking to people now that I knew, that I were friends with in a lot of cases. But that fear of what happens if there's a tornado this day, and we did have that. We had tornado sirens go off. We had power go out.
Yeah, we had a squall the other day.
Anything can happen. And so, but the worst thing is you can have a full house, and if it's a dud show, that's the worst feeling you can have, because the economics behind it may have worked, but you haven't moved the audience.
Yeah.
A question I get asked a lot, and I'll just prevent you from asking it, is what is your favorite, show or favorite moment? And I can't answer that. That'd be like a parent trying to ask what's their favorite child. But my favorite moment that has occurred at a lot of our shows is where the artist stops singing a song and turns the mic towards the audience, or lets the audience sing along with the song.
Yeah.
that can just about bring me to tears every time, because
beautiful
it
sound.
doesn't matter what the music is or what the moment is or the artist is. It's that feeling of oneness among everyone that you can
Connectivity,
feel
yeah.
deep in your soul that makes a success show for me. And that's occurred with only 40 people in the house, and it's occurred with a full house. And the feeling is the same. If it's true art and it moves you, that's the moment. That's
what
I
our
did.
mission is.
That's what I did the job for.
I thought you were going to say your favorite moment was when people are leaving and you could see how moved they were or how much they enjoyed it, and they leave saying, like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I thought that's what you were going to say.
Well, I think you've kept a tradition that we tried to establish, that at the end of every show, we wanted to be down there and say good evening to people as they were leaving. And part of that was we felt that was the intimacy of Thrasher, the whole way that we approach a show. But the other part is the feedback that you get when people are telling you that was unbelievable, and I hope you get them back.
You know, you make a good point that it's a small staff, it's a small place. And so unlike other venues where when you email about your ticket order or you have an issue with something and you have to call in, you're going to talk to one of 3 people. And so over the years, I'm sure a lot of people know your name. Everybody should know Martha's name at this point if you've bought a ticket. And then now it's Katie and I. But, you're not calling in and getting a robot. You're not calling in and getting somebody who's not going to be able to see your name on the list and probably know who you are or remember when your order came in. And I really value that as somebody who works here, value being able to sort of know our audience and have them not be a number.
Right. And I don't know how you could work at... I won't name any particular names of
no
a PAC.
Venue trashing.
No, but there's no way if we had 2,500 seats,
right.
5,000 seats. LA Forum, where I mentioned earlier, I'd seen a number of big bands. I think there was 20,000 there. You're not going to know those names, and it really would be a job. If anything has made Thrasher happen, it would be one word, and it's passion. It's the passion of the people that have worked for Thrasher. It's the passion of the volunteers, the board members, and then we've been really fortunate to have a passionate audience that wants to come. The patrons keep coming back because of that. So,
and you know who can feel that is our artists. We hear it all the time. What a great time they had at Thrasher. And yeah, we're not the biggest stage in the world, but the feeling that they get back from the audience and from the staff from the minute they step foot in here is a really important thing.
Well, it takes a lot of work and a lot of planning, a lot of time to get a Judy Collins, a Roger McGuinn, or even a Paul Thorne. But if they come here and they like it so much that they tell the agents that I want to go back there,
that's what we hope for every time.
That's a success. That's a successful, it's worked money. It's worked from the passion side of it. I had to tell you another story. It's a little bit programmed, but it's also the early days. One of our biggest artists after the Four Bitchin' Babes was George Winston.
Oh, yeah.
And 9/11 had just occurred, and I had heard that George did a lot of work for food pantries. And
Still does.
I approached the agent and said, we have a food pantry in great need. I know that George plays in Philadelphia. This is all the research that we do going into. And then he flies to Minneapolis, and I've noticed there's some open dates between those two, just before Christmas. She said, maybe we can do it. I won't say how much, but he made 10 times at each one of those venues on either side than what he made from Thrasher from that night. And we convinced him to do it as a fundraiser for our pantry. He also visited local hospitals unannounced. No one knew about it, and nursing homes.
That's
and
cool.
would play a couple of songs. So we put together this whole package. But we had to do it on a Monday night in December. And I said, what do I got to worry about Monday night? Monday night football. I hope the Packers don't play on Monday night football. But as you know,
you got to factor that stuff in.
You book this stuff a year in advance, so you don't
all
know.
In the calendar.
You don't know who's on the schedule. You know it's Monday night football, but you don't know anyone would be playing, and that was going to be the worst case scenario. We sold the tickets out, I think, even before the schedule was announced. Turned out there was a worst case scenario, and that would be the Packers playing Chicago on Monday night football. And they did. We still had a full house. But this ties into scary moments. I got the contract after agreeing to the price. And I tell you, it was a 15 to 25-page contract on what was required. And there was so much required. If there was construction, it had to be shut down. You know, he had some very unusual requests. For example, I'd meet him at 11 o'clock at night, and he would play all night for the rehearsal for the show the next night, then go back to his room and sleep, and then we'd wake him up and he'd come and do the show. And after the show, he played the entire night before he left at about 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was sweating. You know, now we're talking Monday Night Football, we're talking a big contract. And George came, did a wonderful show. Everyone loved it. Everyone left and said, you got to have him back. I can't believe you had George Winston here. Well, that's would be the end of the story, except for the next year I went to Arts Midwest, and I met with the agent, who had become a friend by that time, and she goes, I don't know what happened, and this has never happened before, but George Winston wrote me a 3-page letter that said he loved Thrasher, he wanted to come back, and maybe I should look for more venues like that. An agent doesn't want to do that, because if he makes 10 times more at a show at either side, it's not in their best benefit to be booking them in a 200-seat venue. George has been back 6 times, I think, over the years.
Several, yeah.
So that sort of ties everything. You know, the fear about booking, the worry about conflicts, and even the worry about what those contracts say. And they get pretty interesting at times.
Yeah. The outcome, though, all the time is that we do all the worrying behind the scenes, and then the show comes, the show's awesome, everybody feels great, including us, you know, and then that's the end.
And we had a little side benefit out of that too, was I think that first show our local food pantry made we asked people to bring food and then they could write checks, and he donated all the sales from the CD to the food pantry. I think on that first one they made like $1,500, and they'd never seen anything like that. And they came and represented themselves here while the show. So it pulled together so many different elements of the community to make it work. But when you have an artist write back and say that's
a cool
awesome.
Thing. Yeah, I love it when we're able to engage the community beyond having the show. And we do it quite a bit, where we're bringing artists to assisted living homes or into the schools or connecting with the food pantry. I mean, really, the opportunities are endless. It's just up to us to connect the dots with the artists and the agent and the organization. Bela Fleck did a similar thing where all of their CD sales went to the Conservancy here in Green Lake. Artists are cool people.
Oh, it's great when it all works together. And it really does show we may only be 200 seats, but our impact can be beyond that.
It's like a ripple effect.
It can be. I mean, I don't know the numbers of how many children have been impacted from Missoula Children's Theater, but it's in the hundreds, easily in the hundreds.
Beyond.
Maybe beyond. Just by multiplication of, how many shows and how many students are in it. But, it's impressive.
So I think, you and I was very glad to have worked with you as long as I did, and very glad that I still get to call you and, I don't want to say vent to you about programming stuff, but chat about it with you. And we could probably talk for another 2 hours.
Easily.
So we'll have to have you back on the show for sure. But I really appreciate your time today, and I'll think up some good questions to ask you for next time.
Good. Bring them on.
And, if anyone who's listening has questions for Robbie, send them in.
To you.
To me. Rachel at thrasheroperahouse.com. Send them my way.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.